Let's take a ride in a time machine and go back, way back 40 years to 1984. This was the year of Apple's famous first Super Bowl ad for the Mac PC. The Winter Olympics are held in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia, and the Summer Olympics are held in Los Angeles, where Mary Lou Retton scores a perfect 10 on her final vault. Ronald Reagan is reelected for a second term in office, and Terms of Endearment wins the Oscar for Best Picture. Virgin Atlantic Airways makes its inaugural flight, and Prince releases the album Purple Rain. Prince Harry is born. The Detroit Tigers win the National Series. Madonna releases Like a Virgin, and Do They Know It's Christmas? The Band-Aid single is released in December. Also that year, the American Quilter Society was founded by Bill and Meredith Schroeder. Join us live from Paducah, Kentucky, as we celebrate 40 years of this iconic organization at their marquee event. Welcome to So-and-So, brought to you by BERNINA, made to create. Welcome to Quilt Week 2024. We are live in Paducah, Kentucky, and the music you hear behind us is the sounds of the Paducah Tilghman High School Marching Band, an annual award winner throughout the state of Kentucky, and annually they open this special event with their incredible music. Let's take a listen. A lot can happen in 40 years. Many things come and many things go. One thing that's remained a constant is the American Quilter Society. It's the confidence in always knowing that this stalwart organization was going to be there through many ups and downs that has given quilters worldwide something to count on. And this year, 30,000 of those quilters descended on Paducah, Kentucky to celebrate. Here's Bill Schroeder III, grandson of the founders, in the opening awards celebration.
Normally, whenever I come up here, I just kind of start talking and I forget something. So this year, Bonnie wrote me a script that I'll try my best to follow along with. My name is Bill Schroeder. I'm president and CEO of the American Quilter Society. And this is the 38th annual AQS Quilt Week. I know a lot this week y'all will see some banners and stuff. This is AQS's 40th year, which is something that I'm really excited about. My grandparents started the company, so to be able to get up here and talk to you guys and lead this company forward is something that's very near and dear to my heart. 40 years is a lot to be proud of. Over the course of that 40 years, after this year, we will have given away $7.4 million to quilters. Also, this is our executive show director, Bonnie Browning's final show. She's been with AQS since 1994. I was 3 years old. I'm sincerely going to miss Bonnie. She really helps me a lot with things that I'm like, hey, Bonnie, where's this at? Or why do we do this? Or what do we need to do for this? So that's going to be hard to replace. But our new executive show director, Renee Hiatt, has been with us since about August. They've been working together to have a smooth transition, and that's been great.
I went to the National Quilt Museum today, walked into that main gallery, and I was just kind of overcome. I was looking at the beautiful quilts and realizing that we get to hobnob with these incredibly talented quilt makers who are generous with their skills and their knowledge and their encouragement. And it just really struck me what an awesome community we get to be a part of as quilters. And thank you to the Schroeder family for starting AQS and keeping it going, and for this fabulous show and all that we get to enjoy as AQS members and as quilt makers. It's such a beautiful community.
Susan Cleveland, who emceed the award show, not only shared her personal experience at Quilt Week, but then had the opportunity to announce this year's Best of Show quilt.
The Janome America Best of Show winner for the 38th annual AQS Quilt Week contest is Serenity by Molly Hamilton McNally of Coto de Caza, California. worked on this quilt during the pandemic, which was a time when finding calm and peace was difficult. During that time, her studio became a refuge, and serenity is the result of coping with the worldwide chaos of the time.
And what was it like to actually be at the awards in person? Well, Annie from Anchorage, Jean from Wisconsin, and Rhonda from Omaha were having the time of their lives.
Well, this is very surreal for me because I actually have a quilt in the show, and I never, ever, ever thought that would happen, and I had to come and see it.
We came 20 years ago. She's my sister, and it was just almost kind of overwhelming, and so we're ready to see it again and see what it's grown into.
This is my first one. I'm excited they have food and beverages.
Catherine Gross, a district manager for Bernina and perennial fixture at Quilt Week, shared why this is important for Bernina and the industry.
We're so excited to be back at the AQS show here in Paducah. You know, it's 40 years for this show, which is one of the founding shows. I know there are many shows across the country, but what's so excited about Paducah is that we get to meet new friends and old friends. We have customers that come in the booth year after year, and it's so rewarding to have them share with us their Bernina journey and to come and see what's new at Bernina as well as see them tell us what they love about their machines that they're currently working on and just show us pictures of what they've done. It's all about the creativity. Someone said to me recently, what I love about working in this industry is that every day I get to share someone's creative happiness. It's always a delight to be involved with people who sew and quilt.
After just 1 year in existence, AQS hosted their first quilt show in Paducah, awarding a cash prize of $10,000. That year, they also published American Quilter magazine. 1991 saw the opening of the then Museum of the American Quilter Society, which is now the National Quilt Museum, as a place to showcase winning quilts. These were two of the first changes that happened quickly, with many more to come. And how exactly has quilting itself changed over the duration? Bonnie Browning, retiring executive director, shared her insights.
Oh my goodness. You know, it has changed so much. From the time that I started working here in 1994, well, let me just back up. From the time AQS was founded in 1985, everything was being done by hand. And it wasn't until 1989 that Carol Fallert won Best of Show with her Corona 2 Solar Eclipse quilt that was quilted on a domestic sewing machine. And so as I'm searching on the chronology of things that happened during the 40 years of AQS, it wasn't until 2006 that a quilt that was quilted on a long arm machine won Best of Show. So it took 17 years from the time Carol won, which caused quite a stir in the quilting industry, because, I mean, there were people who felt like it really wasn't quilted if you didn't do it by hand, until Sharon Schomburg won Best of Show with a long arm quilted quilt. To be honest, I was surprised at that. I didn't know that it took that long, but that's how long it took really for the long arm industry to develop itself, to get enough machines, to get them in the hands of quilters, for the quilter to become proficient. And so, but not just that, my goodness, fabric has changed. You know, the fabric manufacturers have certainly been bend over to give quilters new and good quality cotton fabrics to quilt with. The thread industry, the tool industry, all of that has changed. And so, you know what, today our contest has awards for hand quilting, for quilting on a domestic machine, and quilting on a long arm machine. So it's changed a lot over these 40 years.
While quilting methods, fabrics, and the use of machines have evolved, one thing that never changed is the enthusiasm of quilters when their creation is honored with a prize or even their work featured in the National Quilt Museum. Jan Hutchinson and Gail Stephanik know the feeling of winning firsthand as their quilt named ... won the Best Movable Machine Workmanship Award.
It's an original design I came up with. I love to hand applique, and especially dots. They're a lot easier than corners. And I designed the dots, and Jan asked to have some empty space in the quilt so she could add her quilting to it. As I designed it, she watched. I sent pictures. We do FaceTime. And she already knew what she had planned to do before she even got the quilt.
There's some distance between you two geographically. How does that work? How do you do this?
Well, the internet makes the difference. We don't have to just rely on phone calls. We text back and forth. As she said, we do FaceTime, and so we stay in close contact.
Send pictures as I progress along. She does the same as when she's quilting it. She'll send me pictures as she goes along. Not that I add anything to it. She does all of it on her own, and it's all freehand quilting.
Becky Glasby, you are the Director of Learning and Engagement here at the National Quilt Museum. Always fun to talk to you. How are you doing?
Doing good. We're excited. It's Quilt Week. It's a lot of fun.
So you have this magnificent display going on about the Roaring Twenties. We're going to talk to some of the winners. Would you tell us about it?
Yes, this is the museum's run contest. It's our New Quilts from an Old Favorite contest. It is run every 2 years. So this is kind of the second go round. 2 years ago was the Shakespeare theme. This year the theme was the Roaring Twenties, which has been a lot of fun to see all the quilts come in. The challenge is for artists to interpret that theme, the Roaring Twenties, in their quilt design, and they have a set size, a vertical layout size to fit for their quilt, so they all hang cohesively. But then they are also able to incorporate a traditional quilt block of their choosing into their design. So that's part of that old favorite kind of traditional quilt blocks into this new design, new things, and we have 40 fabulous quilts from artists all around the world. We had over 60 entries that were entered and then juried down to the 40 here, and they're just fantastic. Lots of different themes. You've got a lot going on in the 20s: music, jazz, the Egyptian movement of finding King Tut's tomb, and architecture and buildings and cities and cars and transportation and prohibition. There's all sorts of things happening in the 20s, and all of that is coming out in these quilts in all fun, colorful, vibrant ways.
Fun and colorful ways indeed. Let's hear of two of the entries featured in the museum for this contest. Jessica Jernan and Mary Lou Izzo proudly describe their work.
My quilt is called Clara Bow Wearing a Cloak, and I have always been inspired by her. If you just Google her, she just is always looking sad and always looking, I just use the word forlorn. I mean, she always just looks beautiful, but, just emotionally spent. And I thought the Roaring Twenties, for all the glamour and glitz, I think there was a lot of sadness there, and a lot of, women always, if they're happy, they're holding a martini. They don't look content and satisfied inside, and I kind of wanted to capture, even though she was the it girl, she was the most glamorous thing going on at the time. She was one of the few that translated. She went from silent films to talkies. She was one of the few that did that and still was successful, but she still always looked sad to me, and she did have a hard life, and I was just trying to capture that. So the center of the quilt is a collage in basically black, white, and gray, and it's just from a photo of her looking kind of sad, and but glamorous. And surrounded by that is 4 sections of kind of like an Art Deco grandmother's fan inspiration there, and they're in grays, peach, and white, and they're surrounded by a black border. So that's pretty much my quilt, and it does have some glued-on beads as well. So I'm sure everyone can interpret that over audio as well as they can.
It's 2 dancers, a man and a woman, and they're doing the black bottom. And on a checkerboard floor, under a gazebo, a lit gazebo is what I would call it, and at a speakeasy, and just dancing. Her dress is a metallic gold. She has her little shoes with embellishments. She has all the jewelry that she would have worn at that time, and he is in full white. Tucks and tails. I mean, it's black with the high white collar and everything. So.
And it's called Cutting a Rug at the Speakeasy.
That's correct.
Also at the Quilt Museum were 3 magnificent displays. Let's meet each creator to learn a little bit more about them and their work. Here's Karen K. Stone.
Would you tell us about your exhibit?
It's hard. It's a little bit overwhelming to have this be happening. I've shown one quilt from 1994 and a quilt from 2009, and the rest of the quilts have been made in the last 10 years. And I believe that these quilts represent an important transition in my quilting life. I've always been a designer. I've always done original work, but to transfer. To transform from being a very traditional quilter or maybe an innovative quilter to becoming a fiber artist, an abstract artist, this exhibit shows the first part of that transition. So the later works are improvisational. And it's a very different experience to be that quilter than the quilter that I was 30 years ago.
So what was the impetus for that transition?
I think it's always boredom, right? You accomplish something, you make what you can make that way, and then I'm looking for fun, right? I'm looking for adventure. And so all of these things represent a point in time and what I thought was just enormously entertaining and delightful and fun to discover.
Then there's Barbara McCraw.
You have got a phenomenal exhibit here, Barbara. First, tell us how you began to quilt and got to this point.
Well, if you've got the time. But I started quilting really in 1997 when I joined the Denton, Texas Quilt Guild group. Before that, I worked as a medical technologist at UT Southwestern. Actually, I was a pathology supervisor there. In the meantime, I started volunteering for a local organization called AIDS Services of North Texas. The reason that I wanted to volunteer was that I had worked at beauty supplies when I was coming up through the ranks before my degree, and I met a lot of gay guys, a lot of whatever. I just loved them all, and they loved me. And that was at a time when I started losing so many of them back in the 80s. So I started volunteering. I started drawing blood at AIDS Services of North Texas. And during that, I one day heard a bunch of ladies laughing like crazy. So after I closed the lab, I kind of walked over because I'm not shy. And I said, "Hi, what are you all doing?" Oh, they were making quilts for the Names Project. And there were 3 ladies there, plus 2 clients, and those 3 ladies were with the Denton Quilt Guild. And I said, "Well, I've never heard of that. What does it mean?" And they explained it to me and invited me to come. And they did more than invite me. They said, "We will pick you up," because I said I'd kind of be embarrassed to come and being the only black person around. I was a little nervous. I didn't know what to expect. Well, they brought me, and to me the rest is history, because it was like the whole guild opened up this one big giant arm and enclosed me in this hug that I didn't even know or understand could happen like that. There were maybe 200 women. It's grown to more than that. The lady you just saw me speaking to, she was one of them. But from there, I started trying to take classes. I learned as much as I could, and quilting to me was squares and triangles and all of that, which I really appreciated. And I did make clothes in my earlier time because I was a really fat kid. And so that was my way of making things that looked younger than what I could find in stores. So I started making those things. But one day I was at the guild, and this lady, she walked across the stage, and she opened up this quilt, and it was a giant pink rose. And it took my breath away. I didn't know that you could take fabric and make animated things out of. I was hooked after that. So I took classes. I volunteered for everything I could just to be around the quilters. I went to every retreat. And I finally started thinking that I could probably do this myself. I volunteered making quilts, as most guilds do, for seniors and CPS and all kinds of children's organizations. That was how I learned how to quilt, because they don't care. The people that receive these quilts, they don't care if they're not perfect or beautiful or whatever. I did my best, but I know that it wasn't as best as it could have been. But that's kind of how I learned to quilt. And the more that I learned, the more I started taking an interest after seeing the giant rose was making picture quilts. Well, I didn't know what kind of pictures I wanted to, but as my family had all passed on, I started thinking about them, my dad, mom, and uncles and aunts, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to make quilts in memory of, or reminiscent to me, of my family.
And finally, retired astronaut Dr. Karen Nyberg, a past guest on this podcast, proudly talked about two of the quilts in her exhibit.
Yeah, these are my two most recent art quilts, actually, and it is Sally Ride and Valentina Tereshkova. And these were in honor of women in space. Valentina Tereshkova was the first woman to fly in space 60 years ago, last summer. And then Sally Ride, the first American, and the anniversary of her flight was 40 years ago last summer. And so I made these last year in commemoration of those flights. Sally Ride, I never did get to meet her, unfortunately, before she passed away, but I have met her sister, wonderful woman. And Valentina, I did meet in Star City, Russia, when I was training for my flight where I launched on a Russian Soyuz. I don't speak very good Russian, so I didn't really get to have a good conversation with her, but I did meet her. And so both of these women were just huge role models for me and really impacted my life growing up. I remember I did a report on Valentina Tereshkova when I was in junior high or high school, because by that point I did want to be an astronaut. And so I did a research report on her. And then, of course, Sally Ride and all of the women that were in her class. She was selected as an astronaut in 1978. And that was the first time that women and minorities were selected as astronauts. And I was 8 years old. And that's about the same time I said I wanted to be an astronaut. So I know that her and her classmates had a huge impact on the path I ended up taking.
A favorite segment of all of you who share this podcast with us is when we get the opportunity to catch up in person with previous so-and-so guests. Quilt Week provides rich opportunities to do this. Ricky Timms tells us about his week here at the show.
Well, I arrived Friday for Saturday and Sunday judging. And then I had a day off on Monday. I went up to St. Louis to see my amazing, wonderful quilting cheerleader, Suzanne Marshall, who's legendary. She's won many prizes here in Paducah. And then back, and it's just teaching and enjoying the quilts and seeing friends. And it's like a family, as you know, being here. I mean, it's not just for me. It's not just the quilts. Of course, the quilts are the attraction. But this is my 33rd year. And I kind of say that's not exactly true because, of course, during COVID, we didn't have. But I've been coming here since 1992. And it's as much about seeing my friends that I consider family. And if I'm not here, I'm just going to miss them so much. So I need my hugs. I need to have these conversations. And people like you that come into our world and we get acquainted and we just are so happy to be together. So,
and you do give good hugs, Ricky. You do. Now the show's been around for 38 years. You've been here for 33 of them. Memorable moments?
I can think of several things. The first thing that I remember when I came here the first time, it was a day bus trip from St. Louis, and we just come down. I'm just jaw dropped. I mean, I didn't know humans could make such amazing things. And that was in 1992. And now I look at those quilts from 92, which are still amazing, but the level of workmanship and design and innovation has escalated every year. And I know, I mean, I have quilts that won prizes back then that wouldn't even get sneezed at now because everything, the level is just higher and higher. But I was smitten by Carol Breyer-Fallert's quilt, Solar Corona, which was just recently really popular on the internet because of the recent eclipse. And I could sit in the museum and look at that quilt and study it and just be amazed. And the museum was new at the time. You know, it was at the time it was called the Museum of the American Quilter Society, MAQS, and then it eventually became the National Quilt Museum. But I just remember being a newbie groupie where oh my God, Irma Gail Hatcher and Katie Pasquini Mossopust and Paula Nadelstern and Carol Fallert and these people that were just goddesses to me, and I just worshiped their feet. And I'm so happy to say they're my friends. You know, they ultimately became friends, and it's just, you know this, Meg, it's a family. So yeah, the quilts are the draw, but it's the people that get me every time.
Ricky, what's important for our listeners to know about you today?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, if they didn't figure that out, I guess on our last podcast, I'd probably just gotten married to Hugo, and Hugo has now become sort of a quilter and celebrity in his own right, and he's always with me. I encourage people to follow him and find him and be part of his world as well. But other than that, I'm continuing to quilt. I have a long arm, which is new for me. For people that think I've done long arm quilting forever, I only got a long arm in the summer of 23. So I'm just starting to long arm. None of my competitive quilts are long armed, but I'm learning. I've done a lot of my dad's quilts on the long arm, and that's getting quilts that finished that might never get finished, which is a real blessing for our family. And then so I'm learning new things and teaching this old dog some new tricks, and I'm looking forward to how that will fly forward in the future. And I am currently working on a significant show quilt. I may even think of it right now as my magnum opus. I mean, it's a significant quilt, and so that'll be revealed when it gets finished, but who knows how the hell long that will be. It'll be a while.
Ricky's husband, Hugo, happened to be right next to me, so I took Ricky up on his suggestion to get to know Hugo just a little bit better.
Hugo, it's our pleasure to welcome you to So and So, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I came from Portugal. I started cooking at the age of 8 because my mom worked a lot, so she just gave me tips how to start cooking, and I started like that. And I started quilting because I was living with Ricky, and I should maybe try something. And I started doing my first quilt. It's from my mom, and then the second was for my sister, and the third was my brother. And it's like doing quilting. It's like, for me, I prefer photography and cooking, but sometimes when I'm doing like appliques, it's like I'm sweating a lot. It's like I'm doing a workout. It's when I'm looking and I put on a wall, it's very inspiring. And when I see Ricky quilting, it's like push me. Okay, I want to do better. I'm gonna do this and that. And now I'm working in a Rhapsody quilt that, of course, by Ricky Timms, and it's a Portuguese with Portuguese elements, and I'm putting a Portuguese flag on it. It's going to take me a while, maybe 20 years, who knows? But it's at the end, it will be really grateful to do it.
Then we caught up with Amanda Murphy.
Well, traveling and teaching. I went to Australia and Japan this year, and then all around the U.S., of course. And then also we had new rulers that came out of BU. Usually, my big product offerings also always get announced at Bernina University for the dealers. And so we had 2 lines of fabric that have shipped in the last year. Quilts. We had OESD quilting collections and brewer notions and all that type of thing. And then all the stuff I can't talk about for BU this year.
and Alex Anderson.
What have I been up to? A lot of being at home. I don't know if you know, but I am recovered breast cancer surgery. And I am great, I am wonderful, but that kind of knocked me right after COVID. So to be back here right now is just a gift.
A not-so-new but greatly publicized offering this year was quilt appraisals. We met Vickie Coleman, who did the appraisals and learned so much from her. In fact, she'll have her own episode of So-and-So.
I am the only certified AQS appraiser in the state of Kentucky.
You must be busy.
I'm very busy.
When somebody comes to you with a quilt to be appraised, what should they expect? What's the process? Walk us through this.
The first thing I do is ask, why are they wanting an appraisal? There are a couple reasons why you truly need an appraisal. One is for insurance purposes. And if a quilt would have a market value of $250 or more, you should have it insured. So that's number one. Occasionally, it has to do with donations and estates, determining valuation. I had someone who brought in 3 quilts. One of them kind of folded up like a football under his arm. And I said, "You don't like that quilt, do you?" "No, it's yellow. It's the most valuable one you have here." And he turned to his sister, said, to his wife, and he said, "My sister's not getting this one." I said, "So who is getting that?" "Our son. He's a history major." And I said, "Great. I hope he likes yellow." So that's the appraisal part of it. I find, though, that most people just want to know, what do I have? And so I do a lot more consultations than I do appraisals. And I tell them you get more bang for your buck with a consultation because we talk about everything that I talk about in an appraisal except for market value. Most people, they're not interested in selling them. They say, what do I have? Should I insure it? What do I need to do with it? What can I do with it now? What will I do with it after I'm gone? So I do a lot more consultations than I do anything else. And we talk about the history of it.
There have been challenges and celebrations along the way for AQS. In 2011, due to high water in the Ohio River, the whole event had to be moved to other locations throughout Paducah. And this had to happen within 72 hours. The show did go on. And in 2013, the city was honored with a UNESCO designation as a creative city of craft and folk arts for their role in elevating quilting as a globally recognized art form. But how did all of this get started? Meredith Schroeder, one of the founders of AQS, and her daughter Lynn Lloyd explained.
Well, we were publishers. Collector Books, I don't know if you remember Collector Books, and a salesman came in and said he had a sale for a book for 600 pounds of paper. So immediately, what was that book? We got to find out what's going on. And so we found out that was Carla Hass's You Can Be a Super Quilter. And so we said, oh, this is a whole new thing. We don't have any books on quilting. So that's what started it. And then we looked into books, we started printing books, and we started the society and the quilt show and the museum.
And has it always been called American Quilter Society?
Yes, it's always been American Quilter Society, yeah.
And you founded the National Quilting Museum as well.
That was part of the whole deal. That was all planned from the beginning. It just took longer to get the museum up because that museum was designed for the winning quilts from this show. Because every year the museum gets about 5 or 6 of the best of shows, their purchase awards, and that was the whole purpose of the museum.
They said we would have a few blue-haired ladies is what they thought, the convention center, and we ended up having over 1,000 people. We had over 1,200 quilts the first year entry, and then it just grew from that. So they were shocked. The city was shocked. So it has changed a lot.
What has changed?
What has changed? Oh, degree of difficulty in the quilting is definitely different from the very first winter till now. Of course, the crowd, that has changed. The whole new place, because that was torn down. I don't really know. I'm trying to think. What else would you say has changed?
How about some memorable events over those 40 years?
Oh, me. Well, the very first year, we took every quilt out and looked at it at the office, then brought it here and unpackaged them again. And so that was a very long week of unpackaging, packaging, unpackaging, and packaging. Well, we had the flood and had to move out of here the year we had the flood. We moved out of this whole building and had to put everybody all across town. So that was different. What else has happened? Oh, there's been lots of things.
Any surprises?
Well, the flood, that was a huge one. Oh, goodness.
So 40 years ago, could you have imagined where you are now?
No, of course not. No. We, of course, expected it to grow and develop and be good, but I don't think we expected to expand to other cities, to have this many people. I don't think so, no.
How many cities are you in now?
5. 5, yeah.
So what do we have to look forward to?
Well, now Bill's going to take over, so who knows? He'll be great.
And that Bill that Meredith mentioned is grandson, Bill Schroeder.
You've grown up in the business. Highlights, memories, what's it like to be a part of this for your life?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that. They're putting an article, which I probably shouldn't even say anything about it, but they're putting an article in the upcoming magazine about the 40 years. And I sent my grandmother an email and said, hey, read this because it's kind of going over the 40 years. And I put in the email, thanks for letting me be a part of it. And she wrote back, thanks for wanting it. And it was a really cool thing. I get emotional, obviously. Y'all have talked to me enough to know. But 40 years is a big deal. I mean, it's a long time. It's something that my grandparents, they started, and I'm sure they probably didn't see it being what it is today. When they started, that they were talking about the first show, they were opening the quilts in the building that we're still in, but they would open a totally different process than we have now. Now we get them all in, we have a different process, but she said they would have 1,200 quilts and they'd open them the day they received them. And so she said we'd have quilts laying all over the building, and we've kind of fine-tuned the process, but I wish I could pick her brain more to say, did you see what it is now? And I just hope that she's excited about where it is. First and foremost, we're going to talk about a little bit tonight about the 40 years. We've given over $7.5 million in prize money to the quilter. None of that's possible without our sponsors. I know. We have several that have been with us since in the 80s. But we have a very good relationship with a lot of our sponsors who none of that would be possible without. I just really want to say thank you to them. I want to say thank you to all the people that helped me put this on. I know that it's kind of redundant whenever you talk to me, but I always want to say thank you to the crew because literally I call favors in from everywhere. My sisters, my aunts, my uncles, my guidance counselors, they all helped me this week, and I could not do it without them. We run somewhere between 22 and 23 people when we're not doing Paducah. I have 56 helping me this week that I know of, and I pull people from everywhere. If they listen to this, thank you so much. I can't do it without any of them. The team that I have that works with me day in and day out, thank you to them. Again, 40 years is something that's really it's really cool to me. I didn't know, when I was a young kid working in this, like you said, I can remember going into the booth with my mom and selling buttons and stuff. I had no clue this is what I was going to do, but I love the quilting community. It's fun. It's a passion of mine because I did grow up in it. So I know a lot of people are probably like, that's probably cliche for him to say, but it's really not. I mean, it really does mean a lot to me to run this company and move it forward.
And move forward it will. The end of Quilt Week marked the end of an era as longtime executive show director Bonnie Browning retires. Seamlessly stepping into her shoes will be Michelle Renee Hiatt. For those who have attended Quilt Week in the past, Michelle is a very familiar presence.
I'm very familiar with AQS, as an organization from the teacher and show perspective, yes.
And your background, before coming here, you are a process and change management professional.
Correct, yes.
And so you're bringing all of those skills to the table. Tell us a little bit about your background before
Sure.
you did this.
So I started off in casino operations and moved into communications and media, working for an organization that was going through some big change in the 90s and early 2000s with buying up internet and magazine companies. So I worked with them to evaluate how to onboard them and migrate them into our company. So I'm very familiar with assessing, people, process, technology, and figuring out how to streamline the process and migrate them. And then, of course, there was, another change in our economy, and they sold them all off. So then lifting and shifting them out and handing them over to other organizations. And then I moved into financial services, doing similar with Moody's Corporation. During the economic change, they bought up all their competitors. So then I was dealing with 70 economists and trying to convince them that they were all doing the same thing, and that I could get them on one system. So I've been, through some challenges. And then as I took on teaching quilting almost full time, I still consulted during the slower months with NYU was a big one, and several other health insurance companies and such, but always doing the same thing, looking at how people did the process, how the system supported them, how it could be streamlined, how we could catch errors quicker in the process, as opposed to later. And that's basically what I've done for the last 30 years. In addition to, of course, quilting, which I've grown up doing.
Michelle, any special question you want to ask Bonnie? Well, I'm sure there are many.
Yeah.
But
I guess if I had to have one question was, what kept you going for 30 years in the position?
Oh, golly, what kept me going? The fact that we get to work with quilters. And, the quilters are the best. They're doing it because they want to and not because they have to. And the other part of that is, when I took this job, I thought if I did it for 5 years, that would be a long time. But the Schroeder family has really let me be creative. When you're a creative person, you don't want somebody to knock you down and tell you you can't do that. They've always let us try something new, encouraged us to try new things, whether it's the contest, staying up with what's happening in the trends and changing the contest when we need to. I would say that really it's been letting us be able to just move forward. And I'm sure that because of the things that we've done at AQS, we have moved the whole quilting industry forward with us. And so that's why I'm still here.
Yeah. And that's what I look forward to, because that's what I've witnessed so far, is that I feel that, Bill, who is my closest Bill Schroeder, that the family is extremely, fair but firm, and that they embrace the quilting industry.
And there you have it. As Quilt Week and Paducah, Kentucky fade in 30,000 rearview mirrors, there will be indelible memories of new ideas and new friends, and the excitement that what has been a constant for 40 years will be the same again, yet different, as AQS continues to embrace the quilting industry. Our deepest thanks to the American Quilter Society for their hospitality and open access to all things Quilt Week, and our very best wishes to Bonnie Browning. Our gratitude as well to all those who gave us their time and shared their stories. Here's looking forward to another 40 years and more for AQS. If you know someone you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to mag@soandsopodcast.com or complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to, review, and rate this podcast on your favorite platform, and visit our website, soandsopodcast.com, for more information about this episode and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank BERNINA for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.